Topping today's news, police forced to shoot a cutlass-wielding man dead on Grand Bahama. The country recorded its 9th traffic fatality for the year. Statistics showing how much money each island generates towards the GDP. And despite the FTX debacle, the government continues its push into the world of digital finance. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. A bizarre incident taking place on the island of Grand Bahama on Sunday. A cutlass-wielding alleged home invader is dead tonight, shot and killed by police. What we can tell you is that shortly before 9 p.m. on Sunday, officers responded to a call that an adult male was at a residence armed with 2 cutlasses attempting to break into an apartment unit. When officers arrived on the scene, they were approached by the male who made death threats towards them. The male was instructed to put down the weapons on several occasions, but he refused. Add to that, he threw one of the cutlasses at the officers. He then charged towards the officers with the cutlass, the remaining one that he had, and being in fear of their lives, the officers discharged their service weapons at the suspect, resulting in him being shot. Emergency medical service responded to the scene and they transported the victim to the hospital, where he was seen and examined by doctors who pronounced him dead. The identity of the male has yet to be released. Her Majesty, or His Majesty's coroner, also attended the scene and will continue with the investigations. Police on Exuma are investigating the country's latest traffic fatality, the 2nd for the island, and the 9th traffic fatality for 2023 for the country. A 21-year-old male lost his life in that accident, according to police, sometime around 3:09 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. The victim was riding his motorcycle in a northern direction in the area of Queens Highway in Georgetown, Exuma, when he lost control and collided into a garbage truck traveling south on the highway. Emergency medical services responded to the scene and on arrival rendered medical assistance to the victim. Unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries on scene. There are often discussions among Bahamians regarding the size of island economies and their contributions to the national gross domestic product, or GDP. Well, the Bahamas National Statistical Institute, BNSI, on Friday released its estimates of gross domestic product for a number of major islands for the past 7 years, 2015 to 2022. The year 2022 alone, the report shows that the Bahamas as a whole generated a GDP of $12.8 billion, with New Providence generating 76.5% or $9.8 billion of the country's GDP, and Grand Bahama a distant second with 12% or $1.5 billion, with the other family islands making up 11.4% or $1.4 billion. The GDP for New Providence increased by 17% over 2021, supported by an increase in tourism arrivals and real estate activities. Meanwhile, quite a number of the islands, especially those in the southern Bahamas, were grouped together, but for those that were studied individually, their contributions to the 2022 national GDP performance are as follows. Abaco generated $364 million, or 2.8%. Eleuthera, $312 million, 2.4%. Exuma, $272 million, 2.1%. Bimini and the Berry Islands, $185 million, 1.4%. Andros, $113 million, 0.9%. And Long Island, $67 million, 0.5%. For those islands that were grouped together, Mayaguana, Acklins, Crooked Island, and Inagua contributing $72 million, 0.56% to the country's GDP in 2022. Cat Island, San Salvador, and Rum Cay contributing $47 million, 0.4%, while the remaining family islands contributing $36 million, 0.28%. The report by BNSI is expected to provide true economic statistics to assist the government and private community when it comes to making decisions on public spending and investments. Despite the fiasco involving the failed cryptocurrency giant FTX, the Bahamas has not finished in the financial digital space as it looks into tightening some of the existing legislation. Expanding further on, the Bahamas is operating and improving in the digital space is Chairman of the Bahamas Financial Services Board, LaTonya Simonet Tinker, who states that as far as legislation goes, the government has taken a very robust stance in order to remain in this space.
We have not only the amendments to the DARE, we also have new legislation that's ongoing, as well as ensuring that we remain compliant in the global community. As Prime Minister has already said, we are compliant with 40 out of 40 of the FATF recommendations. We continue to have the same issues as many smaller island states in that the OECD and the EU continue to push the goalposts further and further away. But with that said, we still remain committed to ensuring that we adhere to whatever the Bahamas is committed to as far as being compliant with whatever global regulatory regimes are thrust upon us. But we're also very innovative in this space, and that has been made possible by the fact that we've been given the flexibility through the not only legislation, but the ability for the government to make very quick decisions when necessary. And so we believe that that space is going to exist for a long time to come. We certainly have the expertise locally, and we have a lot of professionals who are committed to ensuring that our governance continues to be robust as well.
Prime Minister Davis, during a courtesy call last week with the Lord Mayor of London, Nicholas Lyons, spoke about the Bahamas' future in the digital space. However, the Prime Minister could not mention future plans of the Bahamas in the digital business sector without mentioning the failure of FTX, whose CEO Sam Bankman-Fried was extradited to the United States earlier this year on fraud charges.
FTX is now in provisional liquidation in the Bahamas. We are able to take control of about 3.5 billion of its assets. Fortunately, they are physical assets, coins. So the coins are available for those who own it. Just the value may not be there as anticipated. So it was worth $100 last week and it's now worth $10. You still have your coin. That's one of the good things about this FTX Now we will. The jurisdiction has been, unfairly criticized because they are suggesting that our regime is weak. But I say no. If you look at what's happening to the banking industry, Credit Suisse went under. So do I question whether the regulatory regime is weak?
During the meeting with Lord Mayor Lyons, Prime Minister Davis outlined his determination to lead the Bahamas in the digital space and its regulations. He made mention of the Bahamas' claim to initiating the first digital currency with the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Sand Dollar, as an example of the country taking steps forward into a digital finance future. Last week, Ambassador to the United States, Wendell K. Jones, who is also chairman of the Caribbean Caucus of Ambassadors to the United States, representing 14 countries in the United States, was interviewed in a three-part series on the PBS show This Is America and the World with Dennis Holy. In the first report, we heard Ambassador Jones answer questions about the Prime Minister and the government's vision for the Bahamas, the shared focus of Prime Minister Philip Davis and King Charles III on climate issues, and the Bahamas' relationship with Great Britain. In this report, Mr. Holy asked Ambassador Jones some pointed questions about the Bahamas' banking and financial services. Ambassador Jones explains why the Bahamas was able to emerge as a serious competitor in financial services since becoming independent in 1973.
We've had for a long time a very vibrant offshore banking sector in the Bahamas. And we've had very good banking laws in our country. And for a long time, if you owned a bank, say in Switzerland, or you were connected with one of the big banks in Switzerland, and you didn't have a branch in the Bahamas, you weren't saying much. And so most of the European banks had branches in the Bahamas because we had at the time a well-trained cadre of bankers. So they were involved in private banking and trust services. And so the regulations have changed since, because we have been pressured by the OECD and the European Union to change our laws, because the fact of the matter is that we have been keen competitors of some of the financial centers of the world.
The Bahamas ambassador to the United States then sought to make clear that despite being pressured and blacklisted by outside forces, the Bahamas is not a tax haven.
And so since 2000, a raft of legislation has been put in place, and the industry has changed a bit. And the Bahamas used to be known as a tax haven. We are not a tax haven. What we are is a well-regulated financial services sector, adhering to best practices around the world. And we have a number of banking products that people are taking advantage of using the Bahamas. And so I'm told that the industry is, while it declined as a result of the change in the legislation and pressure brought to bear by those organizations that I talked about, we are a very clean jurisdiction, and international investors and people of high moneyed interests, they find it very, very, very good.
The host, Mr. Holy, and Ambassador Jones went on to speak about a wide range of subjects regarding the Bahamas. The three-part series airs on WHU TV, with the final episode featuring Ambassador Jones, who is also non-resident ambassador to Colombia and Malaysia, to air on Tuesday, May 9th at 4 p.m. Again, you are encouraged to tune in. And finally, in this segment, in crime news, a busy weekend for criminal investigators who are investigating several incidents. The latest, a shooting incident outside a business establishment in the area of Carmichael Road. A 64-year-old female and a 23-year-old male are in hospital as a result of this shooting. Police are seeking the public's assistance in locating the suspects, who shortly after 10 p.m. discharged gunshots from a small gray vehicle and then sped off in an eastern direction. The woman, who was shot to the lower body, while the male, who was shot to the upper body, they are both in hospital. EMS personnel responded to the scene and transported the victims to the Princess Margaret Hospital. They are both listed in serious condition. And a 26-year-old male resident of Roosevelt Street also became a victim of gun violence after a shooting incident left him hospitalized. According to reports, shortly after 10 p.m. on Friday, May 5th, a group of males, including the victim, they were standing outside a business establishment located in the area of Rosedale Street off Mackey Street when occupants of a dark-colored Japanese vehicle opened fire on them, resulting in the victim being shot multiple times to the upper body. He was transported to the Princess Margaret Hospital via private vehicle, where he is listed in stable condition as investigations continue into this matter. Police are appealing to members of the public who may have any information as it pertains to these incidents or any other criminal matter to contact the Criminal Investigations Department at 328-TIPS, that's 328-8477, or at 919. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.